I think we're kind of getting past the line where you're either facilities or IT. The two have to work together. The two have to understand each other. So we're going to talk about all of that. Now, when we talk about cloud automation, obviously we're thinking about the things that are repetitive. People talk about AI taking jobs all the time. AI is not going to take jobs. It's going to take the junky part of your job and the minutia and those little things away probably. But I think it's going to also open a lot of jobs and a lot of opportunities, and cloud automation is certainly one of those. When we think about cloud automation and what we're doing, if you really want to think about it in a nutshell, it is the ability to take that minutia and take all of that, the little tiny tidbits and little lists that we have to do, and really put that in an automated platform for one or two or multiple specific tasks. And how we do those tasks and how we scale that is certainly going to be part of this equation. So when we think about policy, efficiency, DevOps, all of that is going to be part of that. And I would argue that I think FinOps is definitely going to be a part of this. I think we're going to see some other things with sustainability and those that are going to come into play. And this is one of those areas where, when we think about things that operate on the IT side, we don't always think about what it requires on, for instance, what it does to our power bill when we have demand fees and those kind of things. And I think being able to marry some of the facilities with some of the automation pieces is going to help us there too. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. But just for the core components of cloud automation, obviously we've got infrastructure as code, and that's where we have a snippet of code that tells us what our machines are going to be. This is, so that we have something that's very, very repeatable, and we'll talk more about that. Configuration management, how we configure those servers, how they're going to look, how we configure the software, how we configure their domain space, all of those. CI/CD, monitoring and event triggering, and then of course some of those future opportunities I discussed. So proper cloud automation matters. And I say that because for all of the benefits that we have when we automate something, we also have to realize that if we don't automate it correctly, we are also amplifying errors at scale. So when I say proper cloud automation, that means it's been designed properly, it's been tested, it's been repeatedly tested. We know that it's going to work, and it's something that we can then put in. Now, if we think about the way we used to write software compared to the way we write software now, and the way we used to provision hardware compared to the way we used to provision hardware now, what we've really seen is a decrease in the amount of human effort that it takes to do these, because we started doing a lot of this automation. And we've also figured out that throwing up multiple configurations is not always the best. Doing things in a very cookie cutter format sometimes is certainly helpful to an organization, and having the same type of systems and services across the board definitely helps from a troubleshooting perspective, from a talent perspective, and a lot of those things. But we also have to realize that our people need sleep, and they're not going to be there all the time. So when we think about automation, what we think about is being able to amplify what a person does. So it's kind of a clone of a clone of a clone, right? And we want to make sure that that works right. So now we can think about speed and scalability. If I have a international operation, for instance, and I need to spin up some applications and push out patches to 100 different countries, that used to be either a lot of cut and paste or a lot of manual effort. Now we can do that automatically, and we can do it more quickly, and we can do it at scale, which is definitely a good thing. And that reduces a lot of that human error. And we all have done it, right? You start working through tasks, the phone rings, something happens, you get back to your list and you end up on the wrong task, and now something in your list didn't happen. Those little tiny tricks and those little tiny errors sometimes can be the most costly. And we'll look at what some of those costly mistakes are. But the idea here is that we want to get to something that's very, very consistent, very, very repeatable. Same way people do when they're cooking. You write down that recipe so you can make it happen again. And then a big part of this is cost control. And I think as cloud spend happens, I think companies have realized that cloud doesn't actually save money. It saves resources, certainly, but it shifts some cost and controls. But we have to think about that cost control and what we do. And certainly with AI, because it is so IO intensive, that's going to be a portion of that. But we also have to really, I think, do this continuous improvement cycle with all of our systems to make sure that they're serving us well. We have new models of hardware that come out. Some might be far more energy efficient than others for certain tasks. We have, different types of all things that are coming out now, even cooling. And so when we think about how we're going to roll these things up, the way we rolled it out to an individual pizza box server might be a little bit different than how we're going to roll it out to a different type of a server. Or maybe we're going serverless completely and we're going to add serverless to part of our cloud automation strategy. So all of those things, we need that consistency, because otherwise, if you change too many things, you don't really know what happened. If you invite somebody into your kitchen and they add 22 spices to your spaghetti sauce, you still got to figure out how to get it back to your spaghetti sauce, right? So the same thing happens here. We have to make sure that we have those very consistent configurations. And before we make a change to a configuration, we want to make sure that that's tested. And then if we think about all of those disparate systems rolling into new systems, we want to be able to automate that as much as possible, because otherwise, if we take 100 humans, even if we give 100 humans a checklist, somebody might misunderstand one of those elements or still skip one of those elements, and then we're out of whack again. So this really provides us a very significant amount of control over the type of information we have, how we're moving it, where we're moving it, and how we apply the cost to that.